How do you tell if you're just bloated or gaining fat too quickly on a bulk? Asks Rishab Khanna, Rishab K, well, whatever, 5883. Now that's a good question, right? And I get some flack for this because of my appreciation for a bulking phase. But you got to remember, that's within reason, right? I would never, tell someone you should gain 30 pounds of body fat in an off season, right? So when I say bulk within reason. But so now on to the second question in terms of how to tell if you're putting on fat too quickly, that's where the mirror is going to come into play a little bit more, right? So what I mean by that is you can check the scale, let's say you're gaining a pound a week. That's solid. That's 4 pounds a month. And if you're looking at yourself from the scale, week to week to week, visually, if you can tell you're, getting a bit fatter, or you're just at least putting on more body fat, not only that you're comfortable with, but just a really noticeable amount in general, what that would tell me, at least assuming your training is decent, you got a little cardio in the mix, is this is your baseline calories, your maintenance, and this is your surplus that you're doing. So if you're putting on too much body fat, this surplus is a little too high, right? So there's a limit where you're eating more food, but it doesn't mean more gains. It just means you're packing that extra energy, like how any organism would, and storing it as body fat. So that would just mean you want to reduce that surplus a touch to something a little bit more manageable. And depending on how much cardio you're doing and how frequently you're training, or physically just how big you are, that's all going to kind of determine how big of a surplus you need to be in. So as long as you can be consistent, and if you visually see yourself getting too soft, just back off a touch. Nothing more to it than that. But if you get too soft, you got to diet back down. Every bulk has its cut. So if you overdo it either way, you kind of defeat the purpose, right? So that's not a super specific answer, but that's basically the gist of it.